A decision to dramatically raise the salary of Alachua County School Superintendent Shane Andrew is now on hold.
Board member Tina Certain proposed to wait until January. TV 20's Misty Webb tells us why teachers union leaders disagree with the raise.
Alachua County Education Association officials say they need to focus on employees before giving Superintendent Shane Andrews a raise because employees should be the priority. Tina Certain said it wasn't necessary to discuss the potential raise of $50,000 until next month when Andrews' interim contract runs out. Board members voted 3-2 to reschedule discussions with Dion McGraw and Lynetta McNeely in dissent.
And I think it should be across the board.
Andrew would be allowed an additional $2,000 increase per year for completing a continuing education course, which is a part of his predecessor's contract.
I've asked for a costing of all those items, and I have not received that information yet so that we could determine the full financial impact of that to our budget.
If approved, Andrew would get nearly 30% increase. People involved with the teachers union say it feels disrespectful to follow through with that proposal.
It would be nice to feel that someone at the district level sees what we're doing in our classrooms and decides that we need to be fairly compensated for that.
Megan Lamone is an ESC teacher who feels teachers overall deserve priority when it comes to raises.
Every teacher who's delivering instruction deserves to be compensated fairly.
The debate over Andrew's contract started when some on the board wanted to replace him with a new superintendent to start November 30th. The proposal to extend Andrew's contract will be decided next month. In Gainesville, Misty Webb, TV 20 News.